The history of Formula One gets around pretty well when it comes to teams. Generally, it's hard to slip anything under the radar for the world's premier auto racing series, with such a huge fan base of concerningly dedicated people all around the globe. There are some things that can fade into the past. Small entries, one-timers, and failed projects who couldn't leave much of a mark on the sport. One of these failed attempts to make the grid was very short-lived and left its remains to a very infamous team. This is the story of the first racing F1 team. This story begins in 1987. The Italian entry fielded its first cars in International Formula 3000 with 6 drivers, team founder and principal Lamberto Leoni, alongside Gabriele Tarquini for the full season, and a third car which rotated Aldo Bertuzzi, Giuseppe Gabbiani, Alain Ferte, and Claudio Langes. They had some success. A few podiums came their way. In 1988, the team slated only 2 cars. Pierluigi Martini and Marco Apicella drove them, with Alain Ferte subbing in for Martini one time. Martini had a string of podiums that included a win for the team at Pregusa. The decision was made that an effort would be put together to try joining the Formula One grid for 1989. The banning of turbochargers meant it suddenly became much more affordable to field entries, and so the modern era record of 21 constructors were slated to compete. Leoni enlisted Brazilian designer Ricardo de Villa to build the car. De Villa had experience designing cars from many classes of motorsports, including work with the Fittipaldi Formula One team. The car was built and housed a 3.5-liter Judd V8 engine. It was first shown off at a memorial event in Bologna, and then it was again shown off in Bologna at the 1988 Formula One Indoor Trophy, which was not actually inside, but that's a separate story. It competed with Gabriele Tarquini behind the wheel, eliminated from that one-on-one bracket in the first round. The first chassis ended up having to be scrapped, as some poor attention to its manufacturing left it unusable. From there, the team had to get a second car crash-tested before officially competing, but it failed. This would set the team back to the point where they would be missing the first 2 races of the season, which would incur a penalty from the FIA. In order to again attempt to make the grid, the chassis was injected with a material called Redis 410Na, which I've found no information about. The chassis passed the test this time, but it was now significantly overweight. This is the point where De Villa himself, the car's designer, referred to it as good for nothing more than being an interesting flower pot. The realization was made that this car was going to be nowhere near competitive, considering how heavy it was and that 40 cars were going to be present on race weekends. The team decided to return its focus on running F3000, continuing in 1989 and through the first half of 1991. Marco Apicella stayed with the team, and other notable drivers including Michael Bartels and Michael Grieco were involved. Apicella got the team a significant amount of good qualifying runs, including 2 pole positions. A few podiums came their way too, including a race victory with Fabrizio Giovanardi in 1989, thanks to a disqualification of Martin Donnelly at Vallunga. In 91, the performance fell off drastically. The doors closed to the racing team, and it was no more. Leoni kept his competitive spirit, though, and moved on to powerboat racing, where he was very successful. The car itself, though, it's still got a future to behold. This chassis was sold to another guy who was trying to make a go of a small team. Life. That's right. Arguably the worst record of any team in the history of F1, Life. The owner, Ernesto Vida, wanted to get his team to try introducing their W12 engine to the series, but they didn't have the ability to build their own car. They purchased the chassis at the end of 1989 and were able to stick their engine in it for 1990. Life is a completely different story, but in short, the car was impressively uncompetitive. Part of its problem did stem from first, where it was still overweight with this unknown strengthening agent. So that's the story and legacy of First Racing. Tried to join the world of F1 at the boom of new technical regulations, but didn't allot enough time to properly engineer and revise the chassis they created to race. While the team avoided the fate of Life, where they made a fool of themselves on the track, it still showed that they were not capable of putting together a competitive effort in the series, which surely was a sour talking point for those involved. And thus, maybe the team's memory will live on, or maybe it won't. I like to think this video can help keep it alive, so feel free to share it with others who may enjoy it, and leave a like if you want to see more of these stories. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, race on, and take care everyone.